Hello and happy holidays. OGB here. In this video, I'll be going over my wish list for Shockadin changes in future updates. Now that we've seen the loot from the new Phase 6 raids, many Shockadin players are feeling a bit deflated from the lack of upgrades. We've seen the new Paladin 3 set, the Battle Gear of Eternal Justice, and I think it's interesting how it supports a one-handed ret playstyle, and I don't have any problems with creating these new builds to experiment or fill a niche, but I feel like at the same time Shockadin has kind of been lost in the mix between like 3 different versions of Paladin that are all focused around exorcism. And although Shockadin does use Holy Shock in addition to exorcism, it's basically the same spell but with shorter range. I mean, take a look. I'm casting Exo and Shock here. Can you tell which is which? And so I've been thinking to myself, what can be done to make Shockadin feel different and interesting? Where does it fit best in a raid? And the way I see it, I'm not really interested in playing a 4th version of melee DPS Paladin with mostly ranged spells that I still have to be in melee to take advantage of. But I am interested in seeing a ranged or spellcaster version of Paladin DPS that leans more into those ranged abilities. And I think there are some ways to do that are very thematic and cool. So let's start with the first one. The first thing that I think needs to be done in order to shift the Shockadin into a ranged role is a new hand rune. Crusader Strike is pretty low impact to begin with for Shockadin, and it's one of the things that forces it into melee range. My understanding is that it is difficult to make spells like Judgment of Righteousness, Consecrate, and Hammer of Wrath as good as Exorcism or Holy Shock in a PvE context, but I think there's actually kind of a unique opportunity here to combine all of those spells into one simultaneous cast in order to boost their strength. Imagine if casting a Hammer of Wrath also casted a ranged Judgment and consecrated the ground underneath your target. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I think this would be a button worth pressing, and it also solves the issue of being able to use Consecrate from a ranged position. The inspiration for this came from another amazing Blizzard classic game, Diablo 2, where paladins have an ability called Fist of the Heavens that calls down a holy lightning bolt to strike their opponent and shoots out an AoE that will damage enemies or heal allies. Coincidentally, the only other attack in Diablo 2 that synergizes with Fist of the Heavens is Holy Shock. And on top of all of that, we're talking about a hand rune here, so Fist of the Heavens is just a natural fit. Alright, so the second thing on my wish list is even more crazy, but here goes nothing. A paladin-only ranged weapon. Like a blessed hammer with 35-yard range. This could be a great opportunity to do something with the underutilized Wildhammer clan in the hinterlands. Maybe achieving friendly reputation unlocks a new quest line where you can be granted a powerful blessing from the Griffin Riders or Falstad Wildhammer and craft yourself a new Shockadin-only weapon. One that essentially lets you do your melee damage from a ranged position. Okay, moving on to my final wish. This is something that honestly has been a long time coming. It's time for an actual Shockadin tier set. We thought we were going to get one in Molten Core and we didn't. We ended up getting a pretty good ZG set, but we still had to piggyback on Ret and Holy bonuses in BWL. And it's also kind of been a huge pain getting all the gear just to end up basically being useless again at the end of a very short phase. So I think Shockadin is overdue for a real set, and I don't really think it needs to be very complicated, especially if we lean into the spell power ranged variant. Some version of the Lamellar set from the Burning Crusade, but with more int crit and hit on it would probably do, especially with how powerful runes like Shock and Awe are now. As far as the set bonuses go, honestly, I'm a big fan of the ramping or stacking buffs and debuffs that increase damage on bosses or increase player damage, because these do a good job at making things viable in PvE content without necessarily creating too much burst on one class in PvP. Here's an example of what a potential Shockadin set bonus on Tier 3 could look like. I know a lot of people may disagree with my wish list, and that's okay. I hope that at the very least it can inspire you to come up with your own suggestions to help make this build more viable. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that. What do you think? Good idea? Bad idea? Let me know in the comments. Let me know what you would do to change Shockadin to retune it for the Nax phase. Once again, OGB out.